Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Woodpeckers Deep Dive. My name's Jeff Farris. Welcome to my shop. Today, we're going to take a closer look at a new Woodpeckers tool, the Multi-Function Router Base. Before we get started, if you haven't already, I'd like to ask you to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll know about every one of our new videos. And if you like what you see today, be sure and give us a thumbs up. Okay, let's get started. So what does the Multi-Function Router Base do? Well, given its name, it does a lot of stuff. But let's start at the very beginning, the most fundamental use for it, and that is to give you extra support for the base of your router. When you're forming an edge, let's say a roundover, on a corner of a piece with the standard router base, everything is pretty good. You're obviously you're out of balance because there's more outside than there is inside. And you can get away with that as long as you pay attention to what you're doing for a while. But then, when you get to the corner, now you've got a much bigger problem. Because as you go around that corner, there just isn't enough support. And that's when you get little dig-ins on one side or the other of your corner. So in getting ready to show you how the router base works, I want to go over step by step how this is assembled. When you get your multi-function router base, you're going to have two sets of rods that look pretty similar. One of them is to attach the router, and the other is an extension set. Now, you can tell the difference by looking at the ends. Okay, the small ends with the little threads are for attaching the router. The larger end with the coarser thread is the extension rods. So the 5/16 or 8 millimeter are the ones used for Festool routers. The threaded ends are going to thread into this little hole at the very bottom of this, and then it adjusts in height to match your router. Now the simplest way to put this together is to start by putting the rods in your router. If you put the rods in the blocks first, makes trying to get everything lined up into the router slot a lot tougher. So just put those in, don't tighten your knobs, but bring them down till they're just off loose. Now we're going to set that on top of the base and thread the rods into the mounting lugs. Okay, now you'll notice that there's a hole in these rods, and so to tighten them up, just find something in your shop that'll fit in that hole and give it a little nudge. So next we want to get the router centered in the base. So I'm going to bring this to an edge where I have something that I know is centered, which is that little trammel point right there. I'm going to adjust it until my router's right on it. Then we'll lock the blocks onto the track. So everything is still a little bit loose, and we need to get it tightened up. We're on our center. I'm going to carefully turn this around, and while that's centered, I'm going to tighten the vertical lock. Now, with the height locked and the width locked, we're going to slide the router back and forth and make sure that it doesn't bind, and it doesn't. We're in good shape here. And we're just a tiny bit off center, but not enough that it's going to matter for the cuts that we're going to make. We want as much support as possible when we're routing the edge. So I'm going to slide the router almost all the way to the end of the opening and lock it on the rails at that point. So you can see that even completely off the workpiece, with just one hand, I have the tool balanced. The closer I come into the work, the better my balance is. So you can see that we're going to have really nice support through this cut. You You can see the corner is absolutely perfect. We didn't have any bobbles as we went around there, and we could do that all the way around the piece if that's what we needed. The next thing I want to show you is cutting a groove to fit a piece of stock and doing it at an angle to your material. I'm just going to pick an angle, and we're going to put the board on there like that. If I had a plan, I would have an angle that I would try to be hit, but we're just going to say make it tough and don't set a specific angle. What I'm going to do is mark both sides of the stock. And that's where I want my groove. So what I want to show you about the groove is how great this micro adjuster feature is. And what we're going to do is set up approximately the distance between the edge of the base and the cutter to the first line. Then we'll zero it in, and then we'll make a cut. We'll come to the other side, zero that in, and make the cut. I know that from the bit to the edge of this base, kind of my low end is 4.5 inches. So that's a good place to start. We're going to go 4.5 inches from this line and set a mark parallel to that. Okay, 4.5 inches there, 4.5 inches there. So we'll bring our track in and align it to our two marks. Now that we have the rail set parallel to the groove we want, we're going to set the spacing between the edge of the guide and the cut. First, we're going to get close by sliding the router along the rails. Then we'll lock that so that I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to drop the router down just above the stock. And with my gross adjustment, I went just a little bit too far. So I'm going to take my micro adjuster now and dial it in until the edge of the cutter is right on my pencil line. I've got it dialed in. Now I'm ready to lock it down and make the cut. Now we'll use the micro adjuster to dial the router bit in to the other side of the cut. So while we're dialed in, I'm going to rotate the bit and make sure that I'm right on my line. All right, let's see how we did. Here's our board again. We're going to drop that in that groove, and perfect fit. In that cut, we were after an angle that wasn't parallel with either side of our plywood. In fact, I measured it and it's 40.5 degrees. This time I want to make a cut exactly parallel with this edge, and that's even easier. The edge fence has 10 different positions where you can mount it. I'm going to use the one furthest toward the end, and we'll just drop the bolt in and thread it in. Now I need a 1/2 inch groove straight parallel to this edge. So I'm just going to locate 7 inches from the edge of my stock. Give myself a little bit of room to dial that in. Now, just like before, we're going to start out with our macro adjustment by sliding on the rails. When I get close, I'm going to lock it, bring the bit down just above the work, make sure my fence is against the edge, rotate my cutter so I can see my pencil line, unlock the micro adjuster, unlock the outboard clamp, and dial it in. Now we're ready to cut perfectly parallel with the edge of our stock. Are you starting to get the idea by what we mean by multifunction? Well, I've got one more thing to show you this week, then we're going to save the rest of the tricks for next week's deep dive. Next, we're going to take this corner off of our piece of plywood in a perfect 8-inch radius. I have 8 inches from both ends marked. That's our start and stop point, and we have 8 inches this way for our axis. So to make that cut, we're going to take our trammel pin and drop it in and lock it up. Now we'll take that axis point and drop that into our hole. Then we want to come to the tangent, bring our router bit down, lock it so we can make our adjustment, and now I'm going to dial in the router bit to just kiss the stock at the 8-inch point. Right there. So we've got a beautiful radius corner here. But what if we wanted that radius to be bigger? Or if we wanted to route a groove more than 8 inches away from the fence? Well, join us for the next deep dive when we're going to add the extension bars. That'll take you out almost 2 feet away from the bit. You can also add extension rods that'll take you out over 3 feet. That'll be next time on Deep Dive. Thank you so much for watching today. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you liked what we did today, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next week on Deep Dive.